So my doctor said to me, this is going to turn your life upside down. That's what she said to me.
Hi, this is Patrick.
And this is Laura.
And you're listening to This is Cancer.
Brought to you by Siteman Cancer Center at Barnes Jewish Hospital and Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. National leaders in cancer. Okay, so for today's episode, I am personally very excited for this one for a couple reasons. I'd like to welcome my good friend Larissa.
Hello.
And Larissa and I have known each other for about, 7, 8 years, something like that, since our girls became besties.
Yeah, something like that.
And one of the reasons I think, Patrick, you and Larissa will have so much to talk about is because, much like you, Patrick, who at 33 was diagnosed with lung cancer, Larissa was diagnosed at age 33 with ovarian cancer. Mm-hmm. And she's here to talk about sort of what that treatment process felt like for her, which was a rigorous treatment process. And so let's welcome Larissa.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Larissa, I think the girls were in second grade or third grade?
Second grade.
Second grade?
Yeah.
And we all had a group of women that were part of what we called a chat night through our group of friends at church. And you found out that you were diagnosed at that time.
Right.
And take me back to when that happened and sort of the kick in the gut of such a ridiculous diagnosis at only the age of 33.
Okay, so I had an ovarian dermoid tumor, which I don't know if I've ever told you what those really are, but they can contain teeth and hair and sweat glands. They're super weird. Anyway, I have a history of those. So I knew that I had one, and I had surgery on March 15th, and they told me they would have the results of the biopsy within a week. So I remember texting you guys, telling you to pray about it, but I just didn't feel like it would be anything. I mean, 33 years old, you just don't. Then I got a phone call from my doctor. This is right after I cooked spaghetti for my kids. Drew was out of town. And
it's weird how you remember specific things
because
like that.
It's like the whole world stops. Mm-hmm. So I got a call from him. I told the kids, just eat. I'll be right back. And I took the phone, went upstairs, and my doctor said, are you sitting down? Like in the movies. I was like, I will. And then he's like, is your husband there? And I said, no. He's like, well, how about I'll call you back when he gets there? And I said, absolutely not. Tell me now. He said, okay, you do have ovarian cancer. And literally, I saw stars. I was like, what? And I know from treating cancer, being diagnosed at 33 is not good. So I was like, I'm toast. That's it. So that was really hard to go back to the dinner table with my kids, like after finding that out. I was just in a complete,
You're probably just, it's like you're sleepwalking. I mean, you're just
literally like
out
it's
of body.
A dream. I'm like, and I was a little bit angry. I'm like, who can tell me what is happening with me, So that was finding that out. And I remember thinking, all the thousands of patients that I've treated, this is that moment.
Yeah.
And it is so intense. And you think that you empathize with people when you're, treating cancer. I thought I empathized with them, but empathy after it happening to me, it was not abstract anymore. Like that was it. I couldn't believe how scary it really is.
And here's the caveat, that whole thing is that you were a radiation therapist at Siteman,
right?
Working for years. And you also used to didn't you work with children as well that had cancer?
Yeah.
And then at this point you were working with adults.
Right.
And so you're a radiation therapist working in oncology and you get diagnosed with cancer. So I just think it's important for our listeners to hear that, because you said I would treat patients all the time. I just think it was so interesting for this podcast today to be able to talk to someone that not only had go through the treatments, but used to treat.
Right.
And what a juxtaposition that must have been for you.
Exactly. It was. I mean, for that to be one of the first thoughts I had was, wow, this is what it feels like. And you think that when you hear somebody's story, you're like, oh, you can really feel into their story. It's so different for somebody. It's like literally somebody just throwing you out in the middle of the ocean, and there you are, all by yourself, not even your family. You feel so alone. And I could just think back to all the people who told me their stories. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what it feels like. And it sucks so
It's
bad.
surreal.
It
Yeah.
is so surreal. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
There just isn't.
And so you have 3 kids, and at the time they were then in 3rd, 2nd, and I think Harrison was maybe like
3.
2 or 3. Right. So young kids,
Yep.
and you know that this is not like, oh, we're just going to do a couple of rounds of, whatever. And I'm not trying to negate or make anyone's process. But if you go back and listen to our pilot, Patrick shared how he had to go through a hella chemo, is what he called it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And your treatment plan was also
Hella. It was hella. Yeah, it was bad.
How did you first, go down the road of discovering that you even had cancer? I mean, like, were you feeling off?
Yes. Yeah, good question. I was really constipated for a long time, like days. And, my coworkers were like, you need to go to urgent care or whatever. And I put it off. And then Drew was like, my husband was like, no, you need to go. This has been days. I was miserable. I was like rolling around on the bed. So I did. I drove myself to the ER and I had a CT scan. And the doctor came in and was like, so you have a really large tumor on your ovary, which wasn't a big deal to me. I mean, it was. But I've had them so many times. I didn't think it would be cancer this time.
And plus, somebody with your knowledge from your job, you
Right.
probably kept things in perspective.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah, I just thought it was a typical cyst type thing that I get. So I was wrong. So, yeah.
So tell us about once they discovered the cancer, what your prognosis was and what the treatment was for what was, they're glad they caught it, but from what I remember, it was a very aggressive form. Because I feel like I remember you saying this is going to be awful.
So there are 3 types of ovarian cancer, and I can't remember the other 2. I know mine is germ cell, which is the rarest kind. It's like the 1%. So they don't have a lot of information on it. They just default to this one chemo regimen, which is super intense. 21 rounds, 8 hours a day. So I would do 1 week, Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. Yours was 8 hours a day, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but you've trumped me greatly already.
I mean,
with that regimen. My
Because
God.
you did 8 hours every 3 weeks, right? And she
4
did
times.
She did 8 hours, 5 days a week, 5 or 6, like 5 different times.
Yeah. And I would have a break I would have a week off. I just slept literally 19 hours a day. Slept.
Yeah. I basically had like a cold compared to what you had going on.
It's so weird. Like, I don't even remember it because I slept so much. I mean, I remember how terrible I felt whenever I would wake up. But it was caught early, but it was grade 4, which means it grows extremely, extremely fast. So this was like, we got to get this chemo started.
So not the stage, but the grade.
The grade, which is a big deal with this kind of cancer.
Okay.
So yeah, grade 4. So we had to get chemo started. I found out March 30th, and then I started chemo April 13th. So it was pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
When they told you how hard the treatment was going to be, did you have any idea until you started?
No. So my doctor said to me, "This is going to turn your life upside down." That's what she said to me. And
Terrifying, but
Ooh.
I guess at least honest. you know?
yeah. So with that, I immediately called Dr. Hall.
And we'll have Dr. Hall on here
Yeah.
in a little bit later. She's a radiation oncologist at Siteman Cancer Center.
Right.
She's amazing and fantastic, and you guys have a beautiful relationship. And
Right.
she'll be joining us in a little bit.
Yeah. She was one of the first people I called. I called Drew, my mom, and then Dr. Hall to give me some perspective. Like, tell me this is going to be okay.
What perspective? Do you remember what she said to you?
Everything is so vague. I mean, I remember Drew freaked out. My mom kind of freaked out, but I remember Dr. Hall kind of like bringing me back to myself. Like, this is just how it's going to be. You'll do this. She was very helpful for sure.
So you're sleeping. I remember People were, helping with the kids and helping with meals and just to try and get, which I think you did a great job of allowing people to help you because you knew the kids needed to they would be worried whenever they were around you, especially your daughter.
Yes.
I always commended you for letting people help you, but we didn't hear from you for a long time because you literally were sleeping. It wasn't like we could text and be like,
I was absolutely sleeping. So thank God for our community, for you, for everybody who chipped in to help because Drew was traveling at the time. I have no idea how I would have done any of it. But
well, your family was a big help too.
Yeah.
Can you remind people, just for those that are, whether you're in the hella chemo category, the little chemo, the radiation, whatever, the surgery, whatever themselves or their loved one are going through, they all may be going through a point where I don't know if I can do this or if I can keep doing this or if I want to do this. So I think you had kind of one of those when you were exhausted, understandably, from this process. Mm-hmm. So tell us more about that.
So I was about 3 rounds deep and feeling absolutely terrible, puking, everything. There was no quality of life, in my opinion. It just felt horrible. And I was sick of everybody telling me what I had to do. I just got tired of I don't know, it just felt like everyone else had control over what I was doing. And it was just kind of a breakout of that. I'm not going. And I didn't go that day. And then that night I was laying in bed, and this is after I told my mom I wasn't doing it anymore. I told Drew I wasn't doing any more chemo. I heard Drew crying downstairs, and it just broke my heart. And it just made me think, oh my gosh, what are you doing? You have 3 kids. Here's Drew, your parents. But it was that miserable. I felt that miserable. So I got up and went the next day.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's what it'll do to you. And that's another thing,
Yeah.
When you don't know, you can't until you go through it.
Right.
How much it can break you.
It absolutely breaks you.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you hear a lot of people, and you hear this a lot, you'll see people start Facebook pages we had a Facebook page for you guys, the fight, stand by so-and-so, and everyone's sort of expected, well, you're just going to have that fight mentality and you're just going to get through this. It's going to be fine. Just fight through it. Mm-hmm. But to fight through it takes a ton of mental and physical
surrender.
Surrender
is what it is. It's surrender to your present experience because you can't change it. And that was true for me. You have to just surrender to it. What are you going to do? I learned what real surrender truly is. So
my dad would always say, my dad also had cancer and he passed away a little over a year ago, but I was with him through his whole, journey. Mm-hmm. And he would always say his way of saying, you got to surrender or whatever. He would always just say, I'm not going to thrash about, what can I do about it? I always had this tempo and aggression to, just don't stop. Just don't quit. Just do all the things you got to do. It's that simple. Just don't let up on anything. And he would almost chuckle at me, my naivete just being like,
yeah.
He'd be like, what do you want me to do, man? All I can do is show up, get in the chair, and hope that I can make it through and come back and do it again next time. There's not a lot of...
Yeah.
You feel like you're constantly in fight or flight.
Yeah.
And if you stay in that mode, you cannot make it through if you're constantly battling with it. So you literally have to...
You have to turn around and face whatever is driving that. It's your fear. It's fear of death is what it is, obviously.
I feel like it's like if I got sent to jail for something, like a murder I didn't commit, and it's like a year in, and I'm like, I didn't do it. You're freaking out, and then you realize I got to calm down, or I'm going to snap, and I'm not going to make it out of here.
Right. That's what I mean by feeling like everybody else had control over me.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I think it was just... So that's when I surrendered and I turned around and I faced the fear. And that was the fear. It was the fear of death and the fear of having no control,
One thing I'd love to know, and I think would be helpful for anyone out there listening that has that's a parent or knows a parent or their child is a parent raising kids. How did you navigate doing this treatment and carrying the weight of the worry it was giving your kids? How did you navigate that?
We prayed a lot, and I was just honest with them about it. I was just honest. I told them up front what was going to happen. My hair is going to fall out. I'm not going to feel good. People are going to be helping, but I'm still me. I'm still me. Everything's okay. I mean, that's really all you can do. It's unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen, so you can't really lay it out there for them. I mean, I did my best, you know.
What really helped you during your treatment process for those that might be listening because they want to support someone? What are some things that stick out to you or things that really helped lift you up or make you feel less alone?
People, having a community, connecting with anybody else who has the same type of diagnosis, talk to social workers, anything like that really does help because that helps you to find community.
What about people in your community? Like, could you remember, were there things that, you know, somebody has a story of like, this one person showed up at my door and I didn't know that they would, or people worry, I haven't talked to them in a while. Should I reach out to them? I don't want them to think that I'm just reaching out to them because they have cancer. Well, my thought process is like, well, that is why you're reaching out with them. Tell them that you love them and just let them know that you're here.
That was so important when people, I felt at first like I was all alone. And then that was the best part of a cancer diagnosis is how many people came to support me. So many people, my family, friends, people who I haven't talked to in a long time, just reach out to somebody who's just been diagnosed because it does help.
Because kind of like, you know, you getting back up and deciding that you need to go to treatment, you know, from the perspective of somebody in your community, what's the alternative? You want to just do nothing?
Yeah.
You think that'd be better? You know, maybe it's awkward. Maybe you haven't talked to them for a while, and maybe it will be obvious that they're reaching out because they know that you have this big, horrible thing going on in your life now. But really, what is the alternative?
You should reach out to those
It's such a shame sometimes. And, you know, sometimes, you know, if things don't work out and they still don't reach out, and then you're looking back, you know.
You guys, I lived the most perfect example of this last week. I was on Facebook and I saw when I was in Cleveland, my first job out of college, I worked at a TV station there and I became best friends with this woman, Emily. And we stayed such good friends even when I moved away. But the last like 3 or 4 years have kind of gotten away from us. And I saw her husband tagged in some post like, you did so much for, he was a big coach in the Charleston area. And he died tragically one night of a heart attack. And the minute I saw that, I went to my phone and just called her. Like I'm like, I don't even know where she is right now. And she was out on her patio and there was a bunch of people there and she picked up the phone. She goes, can you believe this? Like my number was in her phone. And I was like, Emily. And we talked for 45 minutes and we laughed about Chris and we cried about him. And she said to me at the end, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, I'm just using this as an example of like, I'm so glad you called me. Like, thank you for giving me a moment to laugh and think about Chris. And then I've just kind of kept trying to text her and ask her how the plans are going for the funeral. But I could have said, well, who am I to reach out to her?
So I think a lot of people do that because I've had people say that to me, like, well, I just figured you were busy. And no, I mean, it meant so much to get a little text message or just, hey, I'm thinking about you. That means so much because you feel so alone.
Yeah, my boss always says, don't let the great get in the way of the good.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that with stuff like this. Yes. It's not like you got to show up with a meal train.
Right.
And
although that's nice.
I mean, God, yeah, you show up some mac and cheese or something.
Or
you know,
a good casserole.
Cool. But, you know, to like line up a meal train and we're going to take your kids to school and we're going to, whatever. You don't have to do this big grandiose thing. Just, my God, send a text at least.
Yeah.
I felt so alone when I was going through.
Right. Because you literally were. It was a pandemic and you were by yourself.
Yes. Yours is a whole nother deal
but,
with that.
You know, honestly, I understand how people can fall short during those times. And I you know, don't hold grudges. But, man, my friends checked up so short when I was going through cancer. Like, I mean, thank God I have an excellent community here in St. Louis and through my work. Because the people that showed up for me are not necessarily the people I would have expected. And the people that didn't shook me.
Yeah.
But don't you think it's because their age and their lack of experience of being around, stuff like that, they just don't know what to do?
I think it scares people too.
It does, but I
know?
don't care.
Yeah. I know.
It's tough and it's hard. This is something I wanted to ask you about. Did you feel like you had to support people when you were going through cancer?
What a good question.
I feel like that's something I run into in my life all the time. Like when my dad died, when I had cancer, I just would quietly to myself or to like my wife be like, why am I having to extend myself emotionally and physically to support these people that can't handle what I am going through? They should be helping me, not taking from me on my emotional bandwidth.
Yeah. I felt the same way, especially with my family, because they all freaked out. Not my mom, but everyone else completely freaked out. And it's almost like I couldn't handle that. So I'm going to diffuse that a little bit. But that's exhausting, having to cater to that.
Yeah.
But you do, and it's almost to keep your own calm. For me, it was. Ultimately, that's what it was for.
I need to make you people okay with this because you got to be okay with it for me to be okay with it.
Yeah.
I can't have y'all freaking out on the sidelines here.
But that's what
while
happens.
I'm stuck in the ring here.
Yeah. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So
when you finished with the, I'm going to call this hella chemo.
Hella.
I think she gets a 2 hella over your 1 hella.
Oh my God, please.
Okay.
I bow down to your cancer treatment.
I mean, but his was really rough too.
Yeah.
But I think you then it put you through early menopause.
I'm postmenopausal now.
Well, that's because
41.
you had a hysterectomy.
Yep.
So then came the hysterectomy, which was not always the plan.
So when we went into the surgery, I said, if it doesn't look suspicious to you on the outside, leave in as much of the ovary as you can. So that was the plan. But he said that it looked suspicious. So they took everything out. So
I'm sure that was, waking up to that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But I'm so glad that they did take it out. But I was disappointed because I knew what it meant. I knew.
Well, you didn't know if you were for sure done.
Right. But I mean, there's so many things that go along with.
Well, right.
menopause.
It's not just whether you're done with having babies. It's all the hormonal
osteoporosis. There's so many things. The hormones that you take for it can cause other kinds of cancers. Mm-hmm. So I knew I didn't really want to be in that boat, but I'm glad that I was,
So can you tell us what it was like, the radiation therapist before cancer and the radiation therapist that returned?
Oh, completely different. Completely different, I think. I was always a good radiation therapist. I always empathized. But it was like empathy was a little bit more abstract then. Now, I wanted to dive deep into their stories. I wanted to really be present with them and listen because I knew exactly what it felt like. I connected a lot more. And I wanted to know everything about them. How did you find out? Where were you? Who did you tell first? These are the conversations that I had with these people. And I think that it was good for them to have somebody treating them who has been in their shoes. And here I am on the other side of it. So there's hope,
Was there something reassuring about being at a Siteman Cancer Center when you were going through this?
For me, yes. Yes, because I worked there and I knew the kind of care that they provide. Like I said, I can't imagine having it any other place.
And what do you mean? Because you had firsthand in the treatment side and the receiving side. What do you mean about the special care?
I just think that at Siteman, it feels more personal. Things are more personal. We care about every single patient. I know that everybody does. Mm-hmm. But at Siteman St. Peter's especially, you have time to talk to every single patient, their story, everything. Mm-hmm. And I just felt at home there. I felt comfortable there. I felt like if I have to do this, I want to do it here.
Anytime I've spoken to an oncologist or physician, they preach the importance of prevention and early detection.
But there's some of us that don't even know where to start when it comes to prevention and what they're even at risk of getting.
And that's why Siteman came out with this amazing tool called yourdiseaserisk.com.
Yeah, it lists 12 of the main cancers and 6 other important chronic diseases. And you can click on each one of the cancers and it gives you a questionnaire to find out if you're at risk for that particular cancer. It's really a great tool just to get conversations started on what you can do when it comes to prevention.
So if you'd like to know more, go to yourdiseaserisk.com or click on the link in our episode description.
I've been talking with someone in our church community a lot about fear and how fear really just creates isolation.
Yes.
And the more fear you have, the more isolated you will become. And if you're already feeling alone because you're out in that ocean, like you said, the fear will only make you feel more alone. And it won't be able to allow you to think straight. Right. I mean, think about whenever you're in a panic mode or you're fearful about anything, how hard it is to think rationally.
You can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy to say, well, don't be scared. You're talking about letting the fear rule the ability to know that you will have doctors and people around you to help you do the best.
You're not alone. That's the biggest thing. You feel so alone, but that is not the case. You're not alone.
Yeah.
And you have a team carrying you through it, you know? And you just have to remember that and trust them.
Have you seen the movie Airplane? Mm-hmm. You know when that lady
from the 80s?
Yeah. You know when the lady is hysterical and they're all just like shaking her and slapping her and they're saying like, get a hold of yourself.
Yeah.
I think oncologists need to just start with that.
Do that.
When they come into the room to tell you that you have cancer, they just need to grab you by both of your shoulders, shake you fiercely and say, surrender.
Yeah.
Surrender to this.
I think that would really work.
Slap you across the face. You've got to surrender to this just to set the tone for what needs to happen.
I agree.
And then we can get them on the podcast a year from now and be like, do you remember the first time you were told you had cancer? Yeah, my oncologist slapped me and told me to surrender. It was life-changing.
Look, and we joke around here. We joke around here, but I just want to go on record. I'm 100% advocating that oncologists slap their patients.
I agree.
Exactly. Serious.
I agree. The whole team.
Well, but I mean, in all seriousness, I think I value transparency so much. I think I would benefit from somebody just being real with me on the level and just saying that, hey, your outlook sets the tone for this. And I had to kind of gather that because I remember being like annoyed with how positive my oncologist was. And I want to be like, are you not getting what's going on here, man? Like, I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, all right, we got a good plan and this is all going to go great.
Yeah.
But I have gathered that it is important to just set the tone. And I think a lot of oncologists try to do that, to be like, I'm going to be a source of positivity for this person, regardless of where they're at in their situation. But I think I would have rathered someone shook me, slapped me, tell me to surrender and say, you've got to be positive, because it's a huge game changer.
Yeah, it is. It really, I mean, I've seen it hundreds of times. You can usually tell the people who come in and are like, well, this is happening and now this. And then you're like, oh man, it's not going to go well for you then. Mm-hmm. It's fine if they have that for like a little bit. Everybody goes through that. You have to go through a little bit of that. I mean, it's like the grieving process almost. Mm-hmm. You have to, that's the surrender. Surrender to what it is and just take it.
Have your days, feel what you're feeling, but man,
mostly sleep.
Mostly sleep, but definitely you got to get back on the horse.
Slap, get sleeped, surrender.
They're
the 3 S's.
We got it.
That's right. That's right. So Larissa, there's a whole other part of this story. I feel like you're kind of I always describe you as someone who has 3 parts. You're someone who has treated people with cancer, someone that's been through cancer, and loved many people through cancer. You lost your aunt to cancer after you had cancer.
Yeah.
Then your mom is diagnosed with a blood cancer. And then your cousin, who was like a sister to you because you're an only child, is battling brain cancer.
Right.
I mean, and it's been a really tough year for you. So tell me about that process of loving so many people through. I don't even know where you'd start with all that.
So my grandma also, but this is years ago, died of lung cancer. And then, my Aunt Carla had lymphoma. She died in 2018. And then my mom and Shelby shook me. Finding out, well, you called me as soon as my mom found out, which that is a perfect example of that. Like, you calling me, that helped me so much as soon as I found out about my mom. So my mom was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, late stage.
And that's a cancer of the blood, correct?
Correct.
And your mom and your cousin were both diagnosed after you had already been through
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Aunt Carla.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I found out about my mom, and then 2 months later, Shelby, my cousin, who was 39 at the time, just had her 4th baby, had a seizure and was in a coma. and they did a CT scan, and she had a stage 3 glioma. So that felt like when I got diagnosed, it just felt like, how is this happening to us again? And why?
And your Aunt Carla is Shelby's mom.
Correct.
Right. So,
And
God dang.
Right.
Jordan had, Shelby's sister had leukemia. I mean, my grandma, my aunt, my mom, both my cousins, they're all different though. I mean, that just shows you how much cancer is just everywhere.
And there's no cancer gene that you all carry that's similar, right?
No, not that they detected. Yeah.
So what have you learned about yourself through, I mean, I feel like if you look up anything about cancer in the dictionary, it's going to be Larissa
and her whole family.
Right. Like that's not trying to be funny, but it's just,
no,
it's crazy to me how much it has been a part of your life, from your profession to your personal life, to you personally, to your family. But what did you learn about loving people through their treatment?
What I learned, one, about myself, it was a catalyst for me to find meaning in things, and like how when things happen to you, it's an opportunity to make choices about your life. And that's what I tried to do with my patients too. It's an opportunity to look at where you are, what have you been doing up to this point, and who do you want to be? And I definitely have changed. It changed who I am 100%. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I mean, you've become one of the most emotionally intelligent friends that I have.
Yeah. I mean, I know, but
I mean, duh.
duh.
I mean, truly, like even if I'm struggling with something else, I'll call you and say, okay, I need you to talk me through this because I'm struggling with A, B, and it's nothing to do with cancer, or, it could be with one of our girls, or,
That sounds annoying.
She loves it. She's like, I'm so glad you called me. So we're going to talk through this right now. I'm like, okay, thank you so much, because I'm just so aggravated. I don't think I can,
Because it gives you perspective that if that was you. I mean, you can agree with that. It really, how can it not? Your whole life just stops.
Yeah.
In its tracks. Right?
It just puts things in perspective.
It does.
There's so many things I just do not care about anymore. That
why?
I used to spin out.
Yeah, and then when you see other people doing that, you're like, oh my gosh, I've been through so much worse.
Yeah.
Right.
Rookie. That's cute.
You're like, oh, the Christmas dress you ordered for your daughter didn't arrive on time? Like, whatever.
You should probably freak out about that.
Yeah, you really should.
What would be your advice to people that are caregivers to someone?
Again, it has to do with community, talking, counseling. I mean, I think caregiving can be harder than experiencing it yourself, because you're dealing with your own emotional stuff and theirs. So I definitely think finding a community, finding other people that are going through the same thing, going to counseling. Yeah.
I think you should be real with yourself about whether or not you're up for it.
Some people, I mean, there's probably plenty of families where there are some people that are not up for it, like are better suited emotionally, time-wise. I think there's plenty of families that think, who should be doing this? And maybe it's the person that can do the best job of managing the doctors, managing the emotions, and just doing it. Like,
Right.
What did you take away? What helped keep you grounded? How did you?
I don't know. I barely made it through. I was completely overextended.
You mean when you were taking care of your dad?
Yeah. I mean, I was so burnt out. I got sick. After my dad died, I forgot about it. My voice was gone.
Remember, I used to make fun of you for your voice?
My voice was gone for like 2 months, and I got sick as hell because I was just like, you're white knuckling it. It's like when you're working or you're traveling, and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to take a day off. And then your body, like, you let your like guard down, and then it's like time to get really sick.
Your immune system takes a break.
Yeah.
And then you get sick.
Oh my God. I was like, I was so chewed up and spit out at the end of taking care of my dad. But I'm very proud that we did it. Mm-hmm. I think that was like the best gift we could have given my dad, was to stay at home. The family handled everything, and,
Patrick, I think that type of honesty is so helpful, because just like when there are some people that don't have it in them to have that positive attitude when they get diagnosed, maybe that's just not, it's hard for them. It's not easy to be a caretaker, and it does suck the life out of you. So maybe just having someone listen, go, oh my God, I'm barely making it through too, so I'm not alone. Like, maybe there isn't advice other than be prepared that it's going to suck.
Yeah, I think if I could kind of sum up my takeaway, if I were, it would be, only do what you can do and be honest with yourself about that. You can't white knight everything. So if helping somebody through it is going to their meetings, then do that. If you've got somebody else that can help round it out, let them. If you're able to take on all that for that person, God bless you. But if you can't, that's okay too. The important thing is making sure that person is getting what they need, whether or not it's coming from you. So, you got to take care of yourself so that you can take care of other people too.
Well, when we come back, Dr. Lannis Hall is going to join us, who, as you've said, helped you so much in your cancer journey. And I've worked with her on other projects for Siteman Cancer Center, and she's explained the importance of hope and a positive attitude as you head into treatment. And I really want to dig into that more with her and see you guys together and on the other side of this and see what people can learn from the both of you together. And I'm so proud of you. I'm so glad you're cancer-free. You're an amazing support to your mom and Shelby, and you were to your Aunt Carla, and I can't wait to go to another concert with you.
Boys to Men.
ABC. BBD. So as you heard Larissa mention, when she was going through her cancer treatment, she had young kiddos. And when kids watch their parents go through something like this, it can be pretty traumatic. So Siteman has a really cool program called Kids Can, and it's designed to support kids ages 5 through 12. And each month, this group gets together, the kids get together with a facilitator, and they talk about their emotions while they work on a craft project. It's just a way for them to kind of be around other kids and feel less alone. And at the same time, the parents will meet separately with someone else to discuss the things that they need. So if you want to learn more about Kids Can, we have a link to the program in our episode description. Well, we are back, and if you notice there's a little bit of a change in my voice, we are recording the second part of this podcast on a different day, and I'm recording from home because I have COVID. So if you notice a difference in my voice, that is why. And Patrick and Larissa and now Dr. Lannis Hall are joining us in the studio. Dr. Hall, thank you so much for joining us for our conversation.
It is my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy you're here. We've had some opportunities to work with you in the past, but nothing like the opportunities that you and Larissa have had together as colleagues to work together and also as an advocate for her and her doctor. So what's it like to be reunited with Larissa today?
I miss Larissa.
I know.
We had an unusually close working relationship. I mean, we would talk about family, and I've gone through a difficult period, and so did Larissa early on in life, and we bonded over that, and then we started sharing recipes and bonding over gravy.
Gravy, which I've made every year, every Thanksgiving.
So we just became friends.
Yeah.
Dr. Hall, can you tell us a little bit more about exactly your title and what you do at Siteman and some of the things that you really take a personal initiatives in within your role at Siteman?
So my title is Director of Radiation Oncology at Barnes-Jewish St. Peter's, which is a Siteman satellite. I also am the clinical trials leader for the program to eliminate cancer disparities. And that role, we review our clinical trial portfolio and make sure that we have adequate representation of women and minorities across our research division. So that's 500 trials that we evaluate and make sure that we are doing a good job in having balanced recruitment across the portfolio. And then I'm very passionate about education and early detection and prevention of cancer. So I have carved a role in educating our community in various ways and with various partnerships around how to empower themselves to best understand that cancer can be prevented. And that means understanding the risk factors early on, because most of the risks that accumulates over our lifetime, if we started when we were young, we could reduce our risk dramatically of our most common cancers like colon and breast, certainly lung. Prostate is a little bit more difficult, but our three really very lethal cancers can, in many cases, the risk reduction is significant. And people don't know that. They think cancer is something that just has to happen to them. It's just like my number is up, and it has really very little to do with that. It's our lifestyle choices.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious how you react personally, Dr. Hall, when people that you know well and you love are diagnosed, and if you're able internally to keep that same mantra in your head.
It's hard because the fear level goes up a little bit more, but I truly know, I'm not going to say believe, know the power of positive thinking and your support and structure and prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it works.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that's so true. Prayer, of course, but the attitude. I mean, we know you can look at a person, quarter way through their treatment and kind of know how they're going to face this. And a positive attitude goes
a long way.
So unbelievably far. And Dr. Hall's huge on that, which I love.
Well, because not that we've ever been able to quantify the power of prayer. Mm-hmm. And we're not even speaking of any specific religion, but
Right.
but releasing your fear out of you, reducing your stress. So I call it like mindfulness, which is, there are many techniques that help with that, but we know that it helps. Mm-hmm. And, there's a lot more research around stress and how it produces inflammation, and it doesn't help with, our cancer treatments. It doesn't help with cardiovascular issues. Right. And so it's very real when we see someone come in each day and they're fighting. Yes. They're fighting. And you could just feel that they can't come to peace with this, and you know, God, what energy you're exerting. Mm-hmm. So we if we see that, we try our best to get them to our psychologist, who is incredibly helpful. But that's all part of that holistic approach where we're really trying to promote a positive attitude so that we can get them in the best space for success.
I want to mention real quickly a personal experience that I had with both of these wonderful ladies just a couple of weeks ago when my mom was in the hospital for something called polymyalgia rheumatica, look it up. It's an autoimmune disorder. But in the process of doing her scans, they found a spot on her lung. And I went through the process of hearing, oh my gosh, my mom's going to be 80 years old. What if she has lung cancer? Texted Larissa. I was in a hospital that is part of the overall BJC group of hospitals, which Siteman is part of. Larissa texted Dr. Hall. I was within a couple, Dr. Hall I told her what the pulmonologist said. And she said, if he's saying this, which was, once he came in, we're highly doubtful this is that. And did he ask to do this in 2 months? And I said, yes. Mm-hmm. And just having people to reach out to and be like, because I was in full panic mode. I was already exhausted. I was already freaking out because my mom's never been sick a day in her life. Mm-hmm. And to know that I had Larissa, who knows all about scans because she used to talk to me about her own. Mm-hmm. And then also Patrick came and brought me and my mom lunch at the hospital. And I'm talking to him about this. And he's like, okay, well, it could be a bunch of different things. Every single person who's on this mic right now, on this podcast, played a part in calming my nerves because if this is your first episode listening to it, Patrick had lung cancer. Every single one of them helped calm me down in my biggest height of panic. And so without getting too emotional, I just want to thank all three of you for keeping me calm because the fear is incredibly real. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time when I heard the doctor say, I'd be concerned that we need to go down the road of looking at this as lung cancer. I texted Larissa, my stomach dropped. I was freaking out. Dr. Hall, I think you texted me late at night. I was laying next to my mom in the hospital. Okay. And, or maybe, I don't even remember what it was, but all three of you helped keep me calm. And it was such a true and real experience of the what if wheel starting to turn in your head.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been through it with both listening to Patrick and Larissa's story and hearing that from both of them. And I love you both, but I love my mom more. Right? So it was even more freaky.
Yeah, when it's personal.
Yes. And so It's amazing to me how personal this podcast continues to become for me.
Yeah.
And how much everyone that's a part of it is personally touching me and helping me in so many different ways. So I just wanted to take this moment because I can thank you all at the same time.
Well, thank you. You're welcome.
I didn't really do anything. I'm sure Dr. Hall and Larissa did way more. I essentially showed up, threw a sandwich at you, shook you by the shoulders and said, surrender to this.
Right. Calm down.
Get
woman.
mindful. Get mindful.
But you're saying something that's important, and that is the support network. When you go to a consult or to a physician, you have a new diagnosis of cancer, take someone with you. Have another set of ears listening to your options and what the recommendation ultimately is. Sometimes you're just literally in shock.
You're just reeling.
You're everything's going through your head, your house, your home,
It's
your
overwhelming.
kids, your job. And you're not listening. You're not there typically. It's always good to have someone that you can call or someone you can say, please come with me. And just take notes.
Yeah.
It's a much better experience for everyone than if you show up by yourself.
I mean, gosh, at the very least, to say, do you mind if I record this?
Yeah, that's right.
I can send a question back through the portal later on, or have my wife listen to it, or send it to, someone like Larissa and get their input, because there's just so much. Even if you go in there loaded with questions, if you're trying to be a good patient, they'll slip your mind.
They will.
It's my heart rate and my blood pressure
Goes up.
are always so high when I go in there. And I could have just had the best scan in the world.
Yeah.
And they're going, your pulse is pretty high right now. I'm like, yeah. It does that. It does that when I'm here. Let's get through this. I don't like it.
You don't know how many times I have to take a blood pressure at the end of the conversation just to see it come down. I'm like, because the first one, I'm like, okay, I know this is because you're worried.
Freaking out.
Genetic testing is an incredibly useful tool, especially if you have a family history of cancer, right, Laura?
Absolutely. I actually have a family history of breast cancer and recently underwent genetic testing, and it has helped give me such peace of mind. It's a really personal decision to make, but for me, it's something that's empowering me on how to take preventative measures towards my health, and also is going to give me the information to help empower my daughter down the road. A genetic counselor or a physician can actually help you decide if it's something for you, and they can give you advice and information about the risks and benefits of genetic testing.
So go ahead and reach out to your physician if you think you're a candidate, or click on Siteman Cancer Center's genetic program link in this episode's description.
We talked to Larissa earlier about her biggest piece of advice to someone going through treatment as a former radiation therapist, as a cancer survivor, and she said it was surrender. What do you think you could offer from all the patients that you've seen as your best sort of recipe for getting through the treatment?
I think I would have thoughts about that in phases. In the very beginning, when you don't know the subtype, the stage, the treatment, it's information. It's amazing to me how people will become an educated consumer around what vehicle they're going to purchase or what school they should send their child to, but won't go for a second opinion on a life-threatening diagnosis. Won't seek out, well, what are my options and who is the specialist that I should be seeing? So my first recommendation is to treat this as the most important decision you would ever make in your life, because it is. So that means, going to the neighborhood center, wherever that is, may not be what you should do. And you should seek out who does this most of the time, who is really good in this area, who actually has done 1,100 procedures, or who really has done research in this area and is also experienced in treating this disease. where are their clinical trials? Because if there's clinical trials, that means that team at least knows exactly the standard of care. Even if I can't participate in a clinical trial, this is what they're typically giving. So my first recommendation would be the more information you have, the more comfortable you get with what you're about to do.
And just to add on to that, to me, I feel like that's not even going above and beyond. That's doing your due diligence.
Right. That's right.
Because it is the most important decision. So
Education is key. Then your treatment team. You got to like your doctor. You got to like your doctor. Otherwise, when you feel bad, you're not going back.
Yeah.
When they say something that might be in your best interest, because of the way it's stated, you may not accept it. So how something is stated is just as important as what you're recommending. Yeah. So you do need to have a bond with your physician. You don't have to love them, but you can't feel like they are looking at you as a number.
Well, it could be a barrier.
Yes. Because you're going to have some intimate discussions with your doctor about changes in your life, and you've got to feel you can have that conversation.
Yeah.
And if it's not the doctor, then at least the team, the nurse. Don't have to love your physician, but you've got to build some kind of community with that team. So that's second. And then finally, you've got to put your support team together. And that's what I call like your family. And it's not just, your biological family. It's your family. Who's going to get you through this? You cannot be a loner on this particular journey. This one is too hard to do on your own. You need to have someone with you, someone taking you out, someone walking with you, praying with you, supporting you when you are not feeling good. You have to have your support.
Yeah. And if you don't have that, then that's when you need a support group,
right,
or something.
Right.
I'm an only child and my parents have passed away. Okay. If you don't have any friends,
that, right?
Man, you got to get in a support group.
Right.
I'm just thinking there could still be someone that could hear advice that great and go, but I don't have anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Fine. Get a support group then.
And you're so right. I didn't make that clear. We have support groups, and we have some men who won't miss the meeting ever.
I know who you're talking about.
Vacations are arranged around support group.
Yep.
They have been coming for years. And when other people join, they feel the bond.
Yeah.
And there's a discussion that occurs in there. I don't go to support group because it's for them to talk without the doctor in there, for the very reason we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
No, we really want you to share it all.
And a message to the I don't want to be the burden, I don't want to be the burdeners that are listening to this. You are not being a burden to people that you love when you have cancer.
That's the surrender part.
Not
surrender to that feeling of wanting to be in control of your life and not burden somebody. Like, you have to surrender to those ideas.
Because the people that love you will feel burdened if you didn't rely on them and didn't trust them to take care of you, and now you're worse off because of it. It's not like you weren't paying your bills, now you're asking everybody to give you money.
Yeah.
They're DSH.
This is cancer.
They're disappointed. They're sad, and they hurt when you don't include them.
Wait, what was that?
I just say DSH. They're disappointed. They're sad and they're hurt when you're going through one of the hardest times in your life and you don't include them.
Yeah.
And I say that to parents who don't want to burden their children. I can't tell you how many parents say, I'm not telling anyone that I'm going through this.
Yep.
And I say, just hold it.
Yeah.
I know what you're thinking. It is so not. They will never forgive you.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity.
Yes.
For you to grow in your relationship, really. I mean,
they want to come. Oh, do they want to fly? They don't want to fly in town. They're busy. They're work. I guarantee you there will be.
Those are the excuses that you have to kind of surrender to. Those are the crumbs you got to get out of the way.
Yeah, and when that stuff's going on, no one cares about those details.
No.
Right.
DSH, that's good. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, I like that.
Disappointed, sad, and hurt.
exactly.
Are you mad? No, I'm just a little DSH.
DSH.
Just a little douche.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, it's not cool to be a martyr.
Yeah.
When you're going through that kind of stuff, try
that's
to
it.
white knuckle it. It's like when someone says like, I'd rather die than speak in public, and it's like, I'd rather die than be a burden. It's like, really? Mm-hmm. You really would? Because that's a potential reality here.
Right.
Sure, you don't want to just call in a favor and maybe make things way better?
Some people feel worthiness by coming and being a, part of the support team. They actually get a blessing from doing it.
Well, there's purpose there.
There's purpose, yeah.
100%.
So, I agree.
I think if there was one thing we could really encourage is that you don't have that attitude of let me do it alone.
There's no tool book for this. There's no playbook, as Patrick would say, on how to deal with a diagnosis. And I think from having both of you here, it's been such a gift because we've gotten to learn about the importance of listening, the importance of advocating, the importance of getting that second opinion, going to a place that has an expertise in this. And I think there's a lot of things people are going to be able to take away from this conversation. Well, I am so glad that you were both here and got to have a reunion today. Yeah. And Dr. Hall, I'm so grateful that you were there to support Larissa through such a difficult time. There was only so much that her friends and family could do, but I know hearing from someone that knows the cancer and knows her and knows all the treatments, I know you calmed her spirit and helped her get through this. And all the things that you were doing, not just inside the hospital, but in this community, I know is helping so many people. And I hope that people are listening out there about prevention and what they can do. And that at least someone takes one little tidbit out of this, whether it's prevention, whether it's meditation, whether it's surrendering, advocacy, take something from this podcast and put it into action or share it with someone who could use it. That's our hope today.
Well, I thank you. You all are a blessing to be able to have this podcast so that we can share this information. And I thank you for doing it because you can always do something different.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you see the worth in this conversation.
Yep. Amen.
Thanks for listening to This is Cancer, brought to you in partnership with Siteman Cancer Center at Barnes Jewish Hospital and Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, national leaders in cancer.
For more information on Siteman Cancer Center, go to siteman.wustl.edu. Be sure to leave a review and like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.